Reporters and case citations, the basics. So we know that the United States common law system relies on precedent, or the case law that came before. So let's talk about how, when we're researching, we find these court opinions. Let's start with the basics, reporters and case citations. Reporters are simply the books where cases are published. A judge hands down an opinion in a case. That opinion is gathered up with the other opinions handed down by that court around the same time, until they get enough to make a decent-sized book. Then they're all gathered together and published. As more opinions are handed down, they are gathered into the next book. Each book is assigned a volume number. Sometimes, or maybe inevitably, there are eventually so many volumes in a set that the number can't fit comfortably on the spine. In some sets, the publisher cuts it off at an arbitrary number. For some, such as the Federal Reporters, they cut it off at 999. When that happens, the publisher starts a new series, indicated by this number here, and starts the volume numbers over again at 1. This stands for the second series, and there are series that have thirds, fourths, fifths, etc. This isn't just for reporters. You'll see this in other book series as well, such as the ALR. Now let's talk about case citation. The case citation, such as this one, refers to where physically the printed case can be found. Basically where and which book I can go to read the case. First we have the case name, of course, then this string of information. The case citation tells you what book set to go to. This NC here tells me it's printed in the North Carolina Reports. That's the abbreviation for the book title. The citation tells you which volume in that set, that's the number on the spine, and which page to turn to. It's exactly the same as the address for your house. Your address tells you which city you're in, which street you're on, and exactly which house on that street is yours. Now you say, oh come on, it's the 21st century. Who uses books? I'll just Google it. Well, the case citation also has a secondary function. It works as a unique identifier for that case. Consider how many cases there are entitled State v. Smith. 182 in North Carolina alone, last I checked. But there is only one State v. Smith that can be physically printed on page 679 in volume 348 of the North Carolina Reports. It's exactly the same as an address again. How does the post office know which of the millions of Mary Johnsons I'm trying to send a Mother's Day card to? They know, because I give them her address. So let's break this down into specifics. The abbreviation in the citation stands for the book set the case is located in. Again, in this one, it's the abbreviation for the North Carolina Reports, which house the decisions of the North Carolina Supreme Court. But there are, of course, many more of these. The North Carolina Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court, the reporters for every other state, the Federal Reporter, and so on. It sounds like a lot, but you'll pick it up pretty quick. Then, as we discussed earlier, the volume number, and the page in the volume where the case starts. Then there is the information that is in the parentheses. We haven't talked about this part yet. Now, as I said before, I like to think of the first part of the citation as the address for the case. And anything in the parentheses is just helpful information for the attorney in interpreting the case. The date, for example, is always included in a case citation. That's helpful information for the attorney or judge to know, but it's not necessary to find or identify the case. Additionally, in some book sets, it's not obvious which court handed down the decision. In our original example, the Hinson case, it's in the North Carolina Reports. Since only North Carolina Supreme Court cases are published in that set, that's the only option. Other reporter sets, however, include several courts, and when the citation is to one of those book sets, the court information is added in the parentheses. Consider the case Jones v. Cunningham. All the federal appellate cases are published in the Federal Reporter, and of course, there are a lot of federal appellate courts. So in this example, it's cited to its physical location, then in parentheses, That's the abbreviation for the court. Again, this information is unnecessary in locating the case, but it's helpful information for the attorney and judge in determining the importance of the case. Often a case is printed in multiple books, and so it will have two addresses, or what's known as a parallel site. For example, the Hinson case again. It's on page 738 of volume 271 of the North Carolina Reports, as well as on page 537 of volume 157 in another book set called the Southeastern Reporter. The Southeastern Reporter is what is known as a regional reporter. Now let's take a minute to talk about regional reporters, because they're kind of an interesting thing, and we're going to start with a little history lesson. Back when the United States first became a country, there was no system for publishing court opinions. Every state decided for themselves, which is still the case today. Sometimes the state created a paid position and provided for the publishing of the opinions, but sometimes not. Sometimes it was a clerk, sometimes a private publisher, sometimes merely a volunteer attorney who thought the information ought to be preserved. They were published haphazardly, not in any particular order, nor within any particular time span. Sometimes they were just paraphrased summaries. Sometimes they were just plain wrong. Into this mess stepped John West. He wasn't even an attorney, but a traveling salesman, and one of the things he sold were law books to attorneys who were always complaining they couldn't get current, accurate case law. He saw a market in need of a product, a market for fast, reliable, systematic publication of court opinions, and so he launched West Publishing in 1872. Now these weren't the official reporters, but they came to be the ones everyone used because, well, they were better. They were fast and reliable. They were also complete. John West published every case in its entirety, not summaries. They were also searchable. John West invented a research system that allowed attorneys to search for cases by topic of law. These are known as the American Digest System, but we'll cover that more in depth in another lesson. The important thing to know now is that his research system was incorporated into the West reporters, and they worked together in tandem. West's regional reporters were also multi-jurisdictional. He broke the country into regions and made the regional reporters. So with one set of books, a lawyer not only had the law of their jurisdiction, but also the laws of neighboring states. As you know, case law from other jurisdictions isn't controlling, but it can be persuasive, particularly if it's a case of first impression for your jurisdiction. Now, a word of caution here. The regions created by John West are not intuitive. I don't think anyone thinks of Wisconsin as being northwest, Illinois as being northeast, and Kansas as being a Pacific state. But it made sense to John in the 1870s, and they've never been changed. The West reporters were so heavily relied upon that, for convenience's sake, courts in some jurisdictions started requiring citations to both the official reporters and the West reporters, so that no matter which set of books you had, you could read the case. So that brings us back here, with the parallel citation to both the state reporter and the West regional reporter. However, states are starting to move away from citing to the regional reporters. Instead, courts are bowing to the inevitable reality of cases most often being accessed online and are switching to a universal citation format, which is also called public domain format, media neutral, or vendor neutral format, which relies upon assigned numbers and paragraphs instead of books and pages. For example, as of January 1st, 2021, North Carolina instituted their universal citation format. Now the parallel citation to the regional reporter will be replaced with a universal citation. The new format looks like this. The first number is the year the case was decided. The middle is the abbreviation to the court, not the book, and the final number is a number assigned by the court, which is just the order in which the decisions were handed down that year. We haven't talked about pin sites yet, but pin sites are sites to a page number within a case. When you're citing a particular part of a case, such as a quote, you need to put the page number. The problem is, page numbers are different depending on which book you're in, and when you access a case online, there are no pages, making pin cites difficult. For the universal citation format, they have replaced pin cites to page numbers with paragraphs, which are consistent across formats. So when you look at the new cases, either in print or online, there will now be a number in the margin beside each paragraph, and that's what you will use for pin cites. This citation format, however, is only for future cases. These case numbers are not being assigned retroactively, which means you will still be using the old citation system for cases before 2021. A few more notes about West reporters. West publishes more than just the regional reporters. For example, they publish an unofficial version of the U.S. reports called the Supreme Court Reporter. They publish several reporters with federal case law, and they also have state-specific reporters. For example, they publish a set called the North Carolina Reporter, which contains both North Carolina Supreme Court and North Carolina Court of Appeals cases. I want to point this out because it's not to be confused with the North Carolina Reports, which are the official reporter for North Carolina Supreme Court cases. So just to recap, cases are published in chronological order in reporters. There are official and unofficial reporters, which are published by West. Case citations give the physical address of a case. They let you know which set of books the case was published in, which book in that set, the volume number, contains that case, and which page the case starts on. In the parentheses, additional information is provided, such as the date of the case and the court if it's not apparent from the book set the case was published in. Some states, however, are moving away from book citations and instituting a new universal citation system. It's currently in a minority of states, but it's gaining traction. And that's it, an overview of case reporters and case citation.
Yeah!